remember a few days after that trip, I was sitting with a friend at lunch in Fort Worth, Texas, and I was telling her this story. And I was telling her, oh yeah, Peter, I got in this meditation chair and his cat loves sitting on it. He sent me a picture. Let me show it to you. And I go to reach for my phone to find that cat photo. And I turn my phone over and I see a thumbnail. And I drop my phone and my eyes in the middle of the restaurant. I start crying in the middle of the restaurant because I realized Peter had sent me, while I was at lunch, a photo of his aunt from her memorial service that day. And that photo, it was exactly as she had looked a few nights before when I saw her. And that I will never forget that moment of having that photo and confirming it with what I had seen. And so that's what started everything.
Welcome to the Weekly Transit. Interviews and conversations from an astrological perspective. I'm your host, Scott Tajarian. Welcome to the Weekly Transit. I'm your host, Scott Tajarian, and I am here with Dallisa Hocking, 5th generation psychic. Many of you may know Dallisa, as we have collaborated several times over the last year on Dallisa's YouTube channel. She's been kind enough to invite me on, and we've had some really amazing conversations discussing different planetary transits in regards to major world events. But I wanted to bring Dallisa on as I'm starting to open up the Weekly Transit to interviews. And Dallisa is one of the first people that was on my list to interview. And in doing so, I want to just really learn about you, Dallisa. So welcome.
Thank you so much for having me, Scott. We always have a good time with our videos. And so I'm looking forward to diving into whatever the conversation is going to lead us to today.
Yes. Well, the conversation is you, because I want to learn about you, because I don't know a lot about you. I know your astrological code. I've done a reading for you. I know how you work as a psychic because we've collaborated several times, but I just want to learn more about you and your story and share that with my audience of the Weekly Transit, because I think you're an amazing woman. I've really enjoyed working with you. And, first and foremost, tell me, 5th generation psychic, what is that?
Yeah. So I grew up in a family that was really open to all things spiritual. Mm-hmm. And I never thought in a million years that this is what I would do for a career. But Here I am. So my grandmother had these abilities and her grandmother had them as well. So we can trace it back to at least my great-great-grandmother. And my grandmother could see full body apparitions walk through her house. So she could describe with her own eyes, her physical eyes, what they were wearing, who it was that walked through, what they wanted to say. And so I was a little bit scared of the gift when I was younger, which probably blocked it for a long time, because I thought, gosh, if she can see all this stuff, what's following me around or what's in my home? And I don't want to see it. I was just young and naive about how energy and spirits work. But when she got to be older and was getting closer to making her transition to the other side, that's when all of my gifts dropped in overnight. I owned a different company. I was doing something completely different than what I'm doing now. But the universe had other plans. So it caught me by surprise. And so here I am. That started August of 2015. So
oh, wow.
I've been doing it a long time now. Yeah.
Okay, amazing. Like, that was a year before I had my astrological awakening. Mine was August 2016. But so was this on your maternal or paternal side, your grandmother?
Yeah, it's on my dad's side. It's a
Your dad.
paternal. And
Mm-hmm.
yeah, my mom's got a little bit of it on her side of the family too, but through, stories being shared over the years, I have the confirmation of how far back it goes on my dad's side. So I attribute most of it to his side of the family, although I have a cousin that's psychic and she's on my mom's side of the family and she comes to my classes. And so I'd say I probably got lucky on both sides of the family. Yeah.
So your dad's mother was the one that could see like full body apparitions. Would it be accurate to describe her as like the little kid from The Sixth Sense? Like they could see dead people? Is that sort of what it's like?
Yeah. I mean, she would have so many synchronicities and people that had passed away that would come and visit her at her home. And it followed her because at first I thought it was just the house she lived in a very small town in Idaho. And then she moved to a bigger city in Idaho and she still had the ghosts visiting her. So then I started to put together that it was her. And so, yeah, she would see the spirits and she would also make predictions. And so she called me Lisey. That was my nickname. And she would say, Lisey, I'm getting my ESP, her extrasensory perception. I'm getting my ESP. And she would just tell me whatever it was that she was getting. But that's how she would communicate predictions to me as well.
Wow. And what were some of these predictions? Just like, did they have to do with you, or like were they world events, or what? What kind of predictions?
Yeah, both. So
Okay.
I remember when I was, oh God, a long time ago, let's call it 30 years ago. I remember sitting in her living room as we often would. And she said, I'm getting this premonition that you're going to need a stage name one day. And I'm young at that point. I have no idea what she's talking about. And she said, I think you should have a stage name. So she sat there in her living room and is like, I think you should call yourself Dallisa Del Rey. Here, you should practice like signing your name. And so I remember sitting with like pen and paper and writing an autograph out. And I just thought, this is so fun. I was at that point, I was taking dance classes and I liked being in theater. And so I thought, maybe I'm going to be in some big play one day. And so when I ended up having my own stage show in Las Vegas, I named my production company Del Rey Productions in honor of her because she had passed, at that point. And I designed the stage to look like her living room that we used to sit in together. And I talked about that specific prediction in my show because I thought it was so cool that all those years earlier that she could see and sense that I would be on some kind of, bigger stage in some way. But I remember her talking too about how she felt like the United States would change and that the way that the map would be drawn of the United States would change. I mean, that's still, I think on the horizon, but she would see like California, the coastline changing. And so we'll see what ends up happening with it. But yeah, she had all kinds of things to say.
Do you remember what the change of the map of the United States would be?
A lot of it felt like it was West Coast related, if my memory serves me right. And it basically took the West Coast, primarily California, and changed it into islands.
So it was going to break off like because of an earthquake or something?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. It felt more like if I remember right, it was like a earthquake and then, some parts of California being underwater after it breaks off. And so we'll see.
Yeah. Uh-oh. I live close to the beach, so. So you had a full stage play in Las Vegas. Is that what you were doing prior to August of 2015, or was that after August of 2015? What was this full stage play, and where was this?
It was at Binion's in Las Vegas.
Binion's,
and it was
what's that?
It's a hotel casino. It's actually a haunted hotel and casino.
Oh, Okay. Where is
and
that?
down on Fremont Street.
Okay.
Yep. And it was a 90-minute show, 4 performances a week, and I was reading people from the audience.
Okay,
and so
wow.
It was a psychic mediumship reading, and that was in 2020 before, everything got shut down. I'm actually written about in Las Vegas Weekly, the publication they put out when the entire Las Vegas Strip was shut down. And so I think that that's kind of the special, iconic edition of that publication where they talk about my show. And also, by the way, Las Vegas is closed.
Wow.
Yeah, so I have copies somewhere saved in some closet. But yeah, no, in 2015, I was working at a private university in Texas. I was planning events for them all over the country. It was a lot of fun. But frankly, I was bored. I had done that kind of work before. But the travel was fun, but I was looking for something more to keep me mentally stimulated. Maybe I blame that on my Gemini ascendant, but I started a dating and matchmaking company, because I've had such epic success in that area that I figured why not start a company? But what I was doing was the company was hosting speed dating events in a few different states. And then myself and a few others were doing dating coaching for people that were having a hard time connecting with others, and some editing of online dating profiles. And so that's what I was doing while I was working full-time for the university. And had decided very last minute to go on a trip to New York. This was August of 2015. And I waited and waited because I was dating somebody at the time, and he wasn't sure if he was going to go out of town for his birthday because it was over the same time that his birthday would have been. And he said, "Oh, yeah, I'm sorry, I forgot to tell you, I'm leaving town. I'm going to go visit my mom." And I was like, yes, because then I knew that I could go to New York for this retreat that I had wanted to go to. So last minute, I find a really cheap ticket. They had some spots left. And it was at the Omega Institute up in New York.
What is that?
That is a place where a bunch of different spiritual teachers go and teach whatever topic they're known for or they're aligned with. This workshop that I had gone to, ironically, was a workshop on synchronicity and how nothing is an accident in your life. I couldn't make this stuff up. So I go to this workshop, and it was led by Dr. Eben Alexander, who is a neurosurgeon who had a near-death experience. And I had studied a lot about near-death experiences over the years, just fascinated by them. And so he led the workshop, and people were sharing stories and data that they were tracking. And basically, they had concluded that there are no accidents in this school of Earth. And all of these crazy things happened to me on that trip.
Like what?
And I remember when Dr. Alexander was telling us his story about his near-death experience, he gets to a part of the story where a butterfly is an important piece of what happened to him on the other side. And here we are in the middle of kind of nowhere, New York. And it's at night, and he's telling this story. And as he's talking about the butterfly, a butterfly comes in and literally circles him as he's standing at the podium.
What?
And we all, there's probably 75 of us in this class. And you just hear the gasps because we all realize what's happening. And the last day that I was there, a friend of mine who happened to have a house nearby, and I knew this guy from a project in Las Vegas. He said, just come stay with me the last night of your trip. We'll have dinner, we'll catch up. And he said, hey, by the way, do you mind seeing if they have a meditation chair in the bookstore at the Omega Institute? I was like, yeah, sure. So I go in there, they have one. I buy this meditation chair for him, head over to his house. And that night, we just have this beautiful evening of catching up. And I remember when I arrived at his house that night, I hear him yell out to me as I'm getting out of the rental car, and he goes, "Oh my God, Dallisa, there's a frog on my doorstep. I've never seen a frog out here." I'm like, "What?" And I knew right away what it was. So Peter is his name. So when I had my dating and matchmaking company, he was the one that designed my frog logo for my company. So anyway, I go in, we have dinner, we're catching up, and the phone rings, and it's his family letting him know that his aunt had fallen down a flight of stairs and died unexpectedly that day. And and I didn't know his family or anything. But of course, I give him my condolences, and it's late at that point. So I head off to the guest bedroom, and, he goes upstairs, and I don't really think much more of it. But that night, as I'm sleeping, during my sleep state, his aunt, who I had never met, never seen, didn't know anything about, came into my dream state. And I telepathically could understand her. And she said, "I need you to deliver a message to my nephew. Please tell him I'm okay. I made it to the other side." And the next morning, when you kind of are waking up and coming out of, your dreaming, it hit me like a ton of bricks. And I could recall that message. I could still see her in my mind's eye. I thought about my grandmother and how my grandmother would do things like this. She wouldn't necessarily talk about her dreams that often, but the way that she would describe seeing things, I saw it, but in my sleep. And I think in hindsight, it's probably best that way because it didn't scare me. It was just me talking to Peter's Aunt Barbara, when I was asleep. And so it was very approachable. There was a door open for her to come through. And so I give Peter the message the next morning in the kitchen, and he turned to me and he said, "What did she look like?" And I could describe her hair, her facial features, and he's like, "That's her." And and I flew back to Texas that day where I was living, and the whole time I'm like, wait a minute. If this random person that died hours before could come through, what else has been trying to come in? And so that started the thread pulling of what has now led to, doing this all these years later. But I remember a few days after that trip, I was sitting with a friend at lunch in Fort Worth, Texas, and I was telling her this story. And I was telling her, "Oh yeah, Peter, I got him this meditation chair, and his cat loves sitting on it. He sent me a picture. Let me show it to you." And I go to reach for my phone to find that cat photo. And I turn my phone over and I see a thumbnail, and I drop my phone, and my eyes in the middle of the restaurant. I start crying in the middle of the restaurant because I realized Peter had sent me, while I was at lunch, a photo of his aunt from her memorial service that day. And that photo, it was exactly as she had looked a few nights before when I saw her. And that I will never forget that moment of having that photo and confirming it with what I had seen. And so that's what started everything. Yeah.
Wow. Okay, I have more questions about this, but before I get to those, I just wanted to sort of reflect your astrological code. You mentioned you're a Gemini rising, so you have these two distinct sides to your personality. And you might be easily bored in certain situations, but what jumps out to me in terms of your psychic abilities is you were born with the sun, the planet of light, life, and vitality, conjunct just within a degree of Neptune, which is the the ethereal planet, the god of fresh water and the sea, the planet of the unconscious. And both of those planets in Sagittarius are aligning with your moon, the planet of emotions, in the mutable water sign, symbolized by the fish and ruled by Neptune, Pisces. So, and your sun and Neptune are both in the 6th house, which is associated with the 6th sign, which is Virgo. So it's like bringing that dream state into reality. And they're aligning with your moon in the 10th house, which is associated with the 10th sign, which is Capricorn, which is, doing this for a career. Or also, it's an earth sign like Virgo, so bringing it into reality. So, you can clearly see in your astrological code these intuitive or psychic abilities. Your Venus is in Scorpio, conjunct Uranus, which is also in Scorpio. Venus is the planet of the senses. Scorpio is the psychic sign. Uranus is the planet of revolution. Both of those are also in the 6th house, along with Mercury and Sagittarius. Sagittarius, though not necessarily always considered a psychic sign, it is ruled by Jupiter, which is the planetary ruler of Pisces, which is the intuitive sign. And the Sagittarius is the sign of faith. So it's like seeing the big picture, and the fact that Mercury, the conscious mind, Neptune, the unconscious, the sun, vitality, all in the sign that represents faith, in the house that represents, one of the houses that represents material daily reality. So it's very clearly here. Of course, your Pluto and Neptune, as many people who were born in the year that you were born, are aligning with each other. So the psychic planet and the planet of intuition, which gives you a sort of intuitive, it's like your finger is on the pulse of mankind, and really understanding the vibe of what's going on here and what people are feeling. So it's really fascinating to see this reflected in your astrological code.
Yeah, it's fun to hear about, because if you would have been in my life when I was like 10, 12 years old and said, wow, you have all these psychic things in here, that would have been really, really cool to know. And so to hear it now and look at everything in hindsight, it's just really miraculous how it all lines up. Because like you said, there's so many things in my chart that point to being able to be a psychic and be a medium and channel and tap into the collective energy. I mean, it's all over my chart.
Exactly. There's also Saturn, the planet of restriction, reality, is conjunct Jupiter, the planet of expansion. So it's like bringing that expansive energy into material reality. Did you have psychic events as a child that maybe you suppressed because of the societal norms, or was this something that really you tapped into in August of 2015 and realized that there was something there that could be cultivated?
I remember having pieces of intuitive knowledge, nothing like what happened in 2015. I think part of it was feeling a little bit spooked about, are ghosts dangerous? Is it safe to talk to them? I grew up, as a Catholic and went to Catholic night school as a kid. And so I think there was a little bit of not understanding how it worked and would it be okay for me to do it. I think, now that I teach a lot of people psychic development, I think that's part of what can block, the gifts from coming in. But I really think that it was meant to come in. I was 34 at the time. And I was doing a lot of work on myself around my self-worth issues, my value. And I think if it would have come in any earlier, I think it could have postponed or suppressed some of the healing that I needed to do. Because once the gifts came in and I could work with them and understand how to help people through those gifts, I noticed I started attracting a lot of clients that didn't feel great about themselves. And so I think that I needed to go through enough of my own life experiences in order to ground it, like you were talking about, like being practical and in the daily life. I think I had to go through that in order to relate more to my clients. And so I think it was actually divinely perfect with the timing. And I've done it, full time since about 2016. I took about a year off where I was trying to recalibrate, because doing as many sessions as I was doing, it felt like I was sticking my finger in a light socket so many times over and over again that I felt like I had fried my system. And so I took, it was about 14 months where I took a huge step back from all of it just to regain some of that perspective and balance, and so that I could approach it in a healthier way.
So you'd kind of overwhelmed yourself by the number of clients you were seeing, and that's what happened. So what happened between, so you were at lunch with your friend, Peter sent you the text with the photo of his aunt, and it shocked you. What happened next?
I started to get really curious about what else could happen here. And maybe that's that Gemini energy and my personality of like wanting to ask a bunch of questions and see what reveals itself.
Yes.
And my Gemini ascendant and my sun and Neptune, they're basically, across the table from each other. And so I kind of dabble in both areas of the faith and the curiosity. And so one of the first things that I did was test the theory that I was getting this information.
How did you do that?
And was it accurate?
Yeah.
And so I decided that I was going to try to replicate the ability to bring in information for people that agreed to allow me to do it. So I got a journal and I asked several people that I knew and that I felt would be open-minded enough, but I didn't know what was really happening in their life at that time. Like I knew them, but I hadn't had a real pulse on what was happening. So, because I think part of this is the person needs to be open to receiving. And so that's why I had that as a caveat. So I would write down their name at the top of a piece of paper in the journal, and I would put on my headphones and I listened to binaural meditation. And I would sit there with my eyes closed, basically in a meditative state, but with the binaural frequencies going into my ears, it adjusted my brain frequency to where I could channel, because the company that was at the retreat in New York was the company that I ended up doing meditations to channel with after I got back home. It's a company called Sacred Acoustics, and Dr. Alexander's wife is one of the people that founded the company. And so I just said, well, I'm going to listen to something that company created. I'm sitting in my living room in Texas. Let's see if I can get this going again. And I would see clairvoyantly messages for the person that I had their name on the piece of paper. I would hear words and phrases. I would feel things in my body. And all I was doing was dumping it all onto a piece of paper. So I was writing everything that I was sensing.
It's very sixth house of you. Yes.
So I didn't judge it. And Then I would get on the phone with the person and I'd say, before you tell me anything, let me just say everything I wrote down. And then you can tell me if it makes sense and it applies to your life. And so many of those people said to me, not only is it accurate, but you've told me things about my life that nobody else knows.
Wow.
I said, well, don't worry, I'm not going to tell anybody. This was just for practice and see if I could experiment and get it to work again. And so that's what started it. And when I would do sessions in the beginning, I would only do them over the phone. And I think that helped to strengthen the connection in the muscle because I couldn't read body language or facial expressions. I was literally going off of what I was getting through my senses without the person nodding or,
right.
Yes. And so I think that really helped me to gain the confidence that it was working and that it was being helpful. And so that's what ended up happening. And then I quit my job at the university. I ended up dissolving the dating and matchmaking company. And I moved back to Las Vegas where my family was because I thought, well, if I'm going to try and do this crazy, wild career move, I should probably be near family in case I'm starving and need a shower. And so I moved back to Las Vegas. And one thing that you might find interesting, because I'm a Gemini ascendant, I have lived in 3 states 2 times each.
Wow, interesting. Yes. Okay.
And I have a lot of mutable in my chart with the
You're
Gemini.
Triple mutable.
Yeah.
Gemini ascendant, Pisces moon, and Sagittarius sun. So, yes, very mutable.
Yeah.
And then, yeah. And all those planets, the sun, Neptune, Venus, Uranus, and Mercury are all in the 6th house, which is Virgo, which is mutable as well. So you are really heavy in the 4 mutable signs. Yes.
Yeah. And so I started working in Vegas. And
yes. So working where? What were you doing?
Yeah. At first I worked out of a back room at a place called the Enchanted Forest in Las Vegas.
What's that?
It's just, it is a spiritual center, and people would go and get readings and attend classes there. And some people may have heard of the astrologer Cam White. He does a lot of astrology videos these days, but ironically, I never met him in Las Vegas, but we both worked out of the same room. And so I would see his business license up on the wall, and I thought, who's this Cam White character? And now all these years later, he's always popping up on my YouTube feed. But yeah, so I worked out of that back room and I did so many sessions. I remember there'd be some days where they would book me for these promotional sessions and I would do a 20-minute reading for $20. And there would be some days where I would have 16 clients. And it would just be like a hamster wheel. And I remember having all of the times and names written out and like crossing everybody off after I did each one. And by the end of the night, I would stop at Arby's and buy a roast beef sandwich. But I recognize now that I was trying to, yes, get some protein, but actually ground my energy back into my body.
Exactly. Yes. That makes total sense. I can totally relate to that. So these people that are coming through, are they tourists? Or are they local people?
Yeah, it was mainly local.
Oh, really?
Local people. Yeah, because it wasn't on the Las Vegas Strip. And so the people that would come were usually people that lived in the area. But yeah, I started to get so busy there, and I kept feeling this message and nudge from spirit that I was supposed to open up my own space. And so I ended up opening up my own spiritual center retail store in Las Vegas. And that was quite a journey. I had a full team of people that were teaching classes and conducting sessions out of there. it was a wild time just because there was so much energy and so many people. And I remember in 2019 talking to some of the people on my team about how I felt that 2020 was going to change the world, and that I was getting downloads about issues with health and how people would need to be able to help heal themselves. And I remember sensing issues with food and grocery stores. And so I just felt like, God, whatever is going to happen in 2020 feels like it's going to change the world. I mean, so I was getting pieces of it, like a lot of people were that are in this industry. And so then, of course, everything happened. Everything got shut down. And so after everything closed, and I made a decision to close the physical space, because I just felt like it was going to be a while until people were going to feel really comfortable coming back into a physical space. And so I decided at that time, okay, I'll just take everything virtual. And that's when my company just started doing everything online. And so the company has really morphed a lot throughout the years. And I think my mutability has helped with that, because...
Is this Spirit and Spark? Is this what you're referring to? Yes.
Yeah. And so I've just kind of ridden the wave with it. Because for a while, at first it was just me doing sessions. And then for a while I had a team. And then I would have a couple of practitioners helping with things here and there. And it's only been pretty recently that I decided that I would just be the brand, the face of the company. And it doesn't, when I look back at this year, 2024, it's fascinating that when Jupiter was getting ready to hit my ascendant, that is when my popularity on social media actually happened.
Yeah, you blew up.
Yeah. And that didn't miss me, right? Like, I remember thinking to myself, I had a couple of business coaches that said, you've been trying YouTube for a while. Why don't you just try a different social media platform and just see if you can get something to move? So I was like, fine, I'll put on that crown of curiosity and sure. All right, I'll just try Instagram. I already had, a account for me for Instagram for, that I would post on occasionally about things happening in my life. And I said, literally, it was just like a random day where I'm like, I think I'm just going to post a video and just see what happens. And so I'd have to look back on how many days it took. But I remember deciding, all right, I'll trust my coaches. I'll post every single day around 11 a.m. Pacific time. And it didn't take long. Several days later after I started that, one of the videos popped. And it was a video about how butterflies are a sign from the other side.
Oh, wow.
And it went totally viral. Where I had to keep refreshing my Instagram just because I was in shock of what it was doing. And then a couple of days later, I posted a video about how we pick our parents before we're born. That one went viral. And so I had these two back-to-back that twins, right? Gemini.
Yep.
Popped. And so I went from, 800 or 900 followers to today I have 119,000 followers.
Wow.
Yeah.
And that was just a few months ago.
6 months?
Yeah.
Probably about 6 months ago. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. Wow.
Yeah. And even Facebook today, I have 55,000 followers on Facebook because Facebook and Instagram were talking to each other.
Yeah.
And so I had tried for all those years to, try to make something happen just because I wanted to help more people and help people recognize they're not alone and their loved ones lived on. And so I really wanted more people to hear that message. And so it's fun now to see that the content really does, touch people, because that's really my intention with it.
Yes.
So I try to come from a place of being true to myself, Mercury and Sag, true to myself, and speak the truth that I have experienced as a psychic medium. And sometimes people vehemently disagree with what I have to say, and some people want...
Are these in the comment section on Instagram? Yeah, you get some.
Yeah, there's a lot of victim energy in the collective, right? And so I come from a belief that when we own our feelings as our own and we do the healing inside of ourselves, that it really is the key to feeling free. And when I decided to just own everything, I felt 100%. It was probably the most liberating gift I could have ever have given to myself.
When was that?
Yeah, I would say it's probably like mid-30s when I was going through all of the self-worth questions. And because I remember early on, like in my 20s, early 30s, I look at old pictures from those years now, and I feel kind of sorry for myself for when I was in that era, because I can see in the photos how much I really wanted people to approve of me and to love me and to think that I was pretty. And so when I finally decided, through a lot of introspection and energy healing and, working with different teachers, that I wasn't going to let anything outside of myself dictate my value. And if I was mad or upset about something, that I had the power to go within and see where that originated from, and that I could give it grace and forgiveness if it was mine or if somebody else did something to me, and let it go. And so in the comments, I get people that say things like with the video, you picked your parents before you were born, because I've seen that over and over in sessions all these years. And I have a lot of people that say, I never would have picked these parents. They were horrible, or I never would have picked my sibling because they were a disaster and they were mean to me. And I'm like, oh, but that's where all the gifts are.
Exactly. They're missing the big picture.
Yeah. And I get a lot of people, frankly, that are very religious, and they think that I am the devil or that I have embodied Satan. And it's so far from the truth. And I grew up, Catholic, and I've been to different churches, and I'm very open to all kinds of religions and God and what people believe about Jesus and Mary. Like, I'm open to all of it. Like, I keep a very open perspective on it. And I just get a bit saddened when I see somebody saying on one of my videos or, some of my content about, I'm going to go to hell and go to, eternal damnation.
As
I'm
if
like,
they're
all the time.
That's just hilarious. It's like these are the people that are saying that, they believe in God, but yet they're judging you. Like, the irony that, well, they're not. If you believe in God and God is the judge, God doesn't need them to tell you that you're going to hell. The other ironic point is that Jesus, he was a mystic. He was a psychic. He was a mystic. He is the very thing that these people are saying that is satanic, which is so odd. They're very confused. The way that people interpret the Bible is very strange. I often ask people that are very religious, did you ever think about how it's interesting that Adam is the first man, and that they literally took part of him and made Eve, like they split the atom Like, do you ever think of that? They split the atom. Like, do you think that's an accident? Did they just came up with this name Adam? Like, he was literally named after like this science of splitting the atom. That's like people, they read the Bible so literally, they miss the mystical, magical element of what the Bible's really telling us. It's really an incredible book that goes so far beyond how religions are teaching and interpreting it to their followers.
Yeah, no, I agree. So, yeah. So there's a lot of haters in the comments, but
Yeah,
there's also a lot of really beautiful people that I connect with online as well,
for
which
sure.
makes it worth it. And you
Yeah.
always have the folks that write, "Oh, you're a fraud or you're a scammer." And I mean, there's no point in trying to convince
No,
them because they're
exactly.
they're never going to probably
Exactly.
understand it. So,
Nope. Yeah.
and their disbelief in me doesn't change anything about my gifts or
No.
anything like that. So, I
Hmm.
just block and delete.
Well, the irony, like the interesting thing is, why are they following you to begin with, or why are they there? I mean, they're literally. This is the term troll. It's like they, if you don't like the content, then go someplace else. Yeah, but they feel threatened by what you're sharing. It's really interesting. What's
Yeah.
what's what's the significance with the 11 o'clock time of posting? Is that something one of your business coaches instructed you to do because Instagram says that that's the best time to post, or how did you come up with that?
Uh, I think 11 o'clock, I just felt like energetically there'd be more people that would see it.
Mm,
Now I don't really know if it matters that much. I think the consistency is what the key is,
mm-hmm.
because Instagram likes to see that you're being consistent.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then I launched a subscription on there where I have a bunch of exclusive hidden content that's just for
Mm,
subscribers. And so I added that as a layer on as well
awesome.
because I can't do a ton of sessions.
Mm-hmm.
And so, or I've chosen not to. And so I'm looking for more of these ways to provide content and insight in a group format. And
Mm.
so that's why I recently launched that on Instagram, was to try to see if I could build a community through that platform. And so I'm kind of seeing how that unfolds too.
So what is your business model right now? You're teaching classes, you're seeing clients one-on-one. What is you've got the subscribers on Instagram. How are you making your money?
Yeah, the sessions are probably at the number one, top of the pyramid, but those are
Mm-hmm.
definitely at a premium these days, because I've just decided not to do as many of those.
Mm-hmm.
I teach psychic development certifications. I have level 1 and 2, so I teach, how to read oracle cards, reading auras, remote viewing, mediumship, psychometry. So those are really cool classes.
Psychometry? What's
Mhm.
psychometry? What is that?
Yeah, you can hold an item that belonged to someone that passed away,
Mm.
usually is how it
Mm-hmm.
works. And then you can receive information from the item. Usually it's a piece of jewelry.
Mm-hmm.
So we do that in level 2. And I have clients and students that live everywhere, which is fun. And I'm trying to do more of the content creation. I like making content. And so
Mm-hmm.
if I could wave a magic wand, I would do more content on social media, and I would teach more group classes.
Mm-hmm.
And then I recently brought my stage show back. And so I had 3 performances last month
Where were they?
in Western Washington, where
Mm-hmm.
I'm at. And so
Mm-hmm.
that was fun. It's always interesting getting back in front of an audience again,
Wow.
and getting the kinks worked out. I felt like I had to like blow the dust off of the show in Vegas
Hmm.
and get back on stage with it. So I'm glad that I did that. I'm sure there'll be more shows that will that will pop up in different places. And so I'm staying open to what that looks like.
Yes.
So yeah, I'm just staying open to how I can reach more people.
I think that astrologically speaking, in terms of your North Node, which is third house Leo, forming a square to your Chiron, 12th house Chiron in Taurus, and a trine to your 6th house Mercury in Sagittarius, you're the queen of curiosity. So, being and in that 12th house Chiron, you have wisdom in your unconscious, ancient wisdom in your unconscious that you can bring into reality. So the dream into reality, being on the center stage, whether it's through social media or an actual stage, and really helping broaden the perspective of those that you are connecting to and inviting or enticing their curiosity. That's where you really thrive, and you are. So that's amazing.
Yeah, it's fun.
Yes.
It's fun. Hopefully, I'll be able to do more content in the near future. And I look forward to the day that I can make the decision of whether I want to do any more one-on-one sessions. I know there's a lot of folks in the industry that once they get to, a certain level of having an audience that's watching and enjoying their content, that a lot of them don't do one-on-one sessions anymore. And I understand why after having that burnout myself. And so I'm staying open to how it unfolds.
Yes. Good for you. Well, and like looking at your website too, I'm just so curious because I'm reading your bio and it says Dallisa trained with industry superstars Tony Robbins, Dr. Brian Weiss, Dr. Bruce Lipton, and Dr. Raymond Moody. Her certifications include Lee Harris Energy Mastery, Hollister Rand and John Holland's Mediumship courses, the Richard Knight Tarot Academy, a bachelor's degree in communications from UNLV, Kepner Trago Problem Solving and Decision Making Certification, and a Women's Entrepreneurship Certificate from Cornell University. Dallisa also graduated from the Goldman Sachs 10,000 Small Businesses program. I'm like, wow, okay. Did this all happen post August 2015?
I think a lot, yeah.
Except for the bachelor's at UNLV, I guess.
Yeah, off the top of my head, I feel like most or all of it did, because I started really amping up the classes that I was taking to try to understand the gifts more, which is why I was doing the mediumship and the energy classes. And I've learned a lot from really incredible teachers. I would say Dr. Raymond Moody, he was before because I'd had this fascination with near-death experiences. Ironically, when I was a kid, my pediatrician was at that time the leading expert in near-death experiences in kids. And so I would go into the doctor's office as a kid and see these drawings on the walls from kids that had died and what they had seen and experienced. So it was like in my psyche from a young age.
Wow.
And so when I went to UNLV, Dr. Raymond Moody was, I don't know what you would call him, maybe an adjunct professor, because I don't think he was living there necessarily, at least not long term that I could see. And he was teaching a semester class on near-death experiences and everything that he had learned researching them for all of those years. So when I was in college, I got to take this class from him, and he is one of the most renowned experts on experiences that people have had, and he's written, best-selling book about it. And so to have a whole semester with him was really, really cool. And then Tony Robbins, that was an interesting experience. I did his fire walk, and that was...
You walked on the hot coals? Is that what that is? Yeah.
Yeah. And so he had hypnotized everyone in this giant building with thousands and thousands of people. And as I think back on it now, I recognize that we were all like sheep going to the hot coals and we were in a trance. But I've had hypnosis done several times. That was the biggest one I've ever been in. But I've also been in ones where we did look at past lives. And that was interesting.
So did it hurt walking on the coals?
It didn't hurt, but I know that they were real because after I crossed over the coals, a little piece of a coal was stuck on my foot. And that hurt because I had come out of it after I'd walked over him. And so it left like a little red like singe mark on my foot. And so whatever part of my brain had been shut off from the pain, felt it for a little bit as I had that on my foot after. But it was wild because I felt none of the pain as I walked over those coals.
What did you learn from Tony Robbins?
Ooh, there was something that came to mind yesterday that I remember from his workshop, which was that we really need to anchor into our why in order to make a lasting change. And so if you're going to change your diet because you want to be healthier, then you really have to anchor into why are you doing it now? Why are you going to get healthier? What is that big heartfelt reason? Because if you have that anchor as to why you're doing it, you will have a greater chance of actually succeeding and getting to the finish line. Because so many of us, myself included, like you come up with a goal and you're like, oh, maybe, like you're kind of half in. And it's probably because you don't have enough of a reason, a big enough reason to actually do it.
So it's not going to sustain because you're not really bought in.
Yep.
Dr. Raymond Moody and the near-death experiences, what is some of what you can tell us about that? Like what are people experiencing when they die?
Yeah. I do think that the other side is really close to where we're at right now. I don't think it's up in the clouds or the sky because I think it's probably another dimension, another frequency is the best way I can describe it. Because when I do mediumship, the spirits will step forward basically right in front of me, but they're a few feet off the ground in front of me. And so I don't think it's some far off land that we have to get to. I think it's right next door, actually. And the research backs up that feeling of still feeling connected to loved ones that are here on Earth after you pass. There's reports of people that die on an operating table and they're hovering above their body and they go into a room next door and they can hear a conversation that's happening about them. And then when they come back to life and back in their body, they can recall the conversation that they weren't a part of because they were hovering over it when they were in a spirit form. They show me different parts of the other side. I'm often shown with children that pass away. They show me this one space where the kids often play in. And what I love so much about it is they're playing with each other, but I also see a lot of animals there playing with the kids. There's healing spaces, people that have gone through a lot of trauma, people that have taken their own lives. They often show me that they are in this healing center where their soul is being basically worked on and they're working through the healing. And so people that opt out of their incarnation before finishing the work that they needed to do on Earth, leaving Earth doesn't stop the lessons. And so that still continues on the other side. And I think one thing I'm asked a lot that connects to near-death experiences, people often ask, is there a hell? Is it heaven? And I don't usually refer to it as heaven. But I also think that there isn't a place of eternal damnation, at least based on what I've seen so far. I do think that there are spaces that people can go into that have been created if they've been a horrible, horrible human and they're having to work through a lot of what they did in that lifetime. But I haven't seen any real proof yet that makes me feel like hell is a place that somebody goes forever and ever. Because I do believe in reincarnation, and we've been good people and bad people and everything in between. All of us have. And one thing that is shown consistently through near-death experiences is that when we get to the other side, we go through a life review process. And through the life review, we experience our life again. We see it, we feel it, and it feels like it's an instant, but we go through all of it. And not only do we go through all of it, but we feel it and experience it from the other person's perspective.
Ooh.
And so if you're in traffic and you honk your horn and you flip somebody off and you're screaming at them, you're going to feel that experience from the person you did it to.
Oh.
Yeah. Yes. And so I think with that being said, that could feel like hell to some people that are going through that experience because they're having to relive it and all of the things that they chose to do in their lifetime.
Wow.
Yeah. But I think that it serves as an opportunity for us to heal and to evolve. I think we're here on Earth School for our own soul's evolution. And that life review process on the other side gives us that opportunity to look at all of it in like a 3D form. And
Wow.
then I think we plot and plan what we want to do next and who we want to do it with. And so I think we're kind of always dreaming and thinking about what we want to do in our next evolution. So I don't think, at least for me, it doesn't appear that we go to nirvana forever and ever and ever. You might go there for a little bit. You might go there as a space in between what you're going to do next. But I haven't seen a soul that says, I'm going to be here forever and ever and ever. It's usually like, hey, I'm waiting for my loved ones to get back over and we're going to go do something else. Like, so it feels to me more like a place that people hang out.
How many times have you reincarnated to Earth?
Oh,
or
God.
to other planets, or other places, other dimensions?
Yeah, and I don't even think if I've ever sat down and asked Spirit how many times I've done this. I've done it a lot, and I've done it in other places other than Earth. I do remember the first past life memory that I had when I was under hypnosis still sticks with me, and it's so prevalent to what one of the lessons I feel like I signed up for, which was learning my worth, learning my value. So the first memory I saw, I was a Black woman and I was a slave, and I was working in the field, and I knew that I was worth nothing, and that I was just there to work. I felt like I was just this machine that nobody cared about, and I was just a shell. I wasn't like a personality. I was just this thing in the field. And a friend of mine who I've had for a really long time, through conversation and what Spirit has shown me, because she's also had memories of the same thing. And so through our conversations and what I've been shown, we've been able to see that we had a lifetime together as slaves. And so that's not uncommon to what I've seen. You know, people usually travel in lifetimes with the same people every time. Not in the same roles or the same gender or anything like that. And not everyone in this lifetime may be in another lifetime with you, but sometimes we play the really bad person in someone's life in order to give them an opportunity to heal and rise above it. And so I think that's also why I just don't feel like after a lifetime we would rot in hell somewhere. Because if it's a school and we're signing up to play these parts for each other, then why would someone be like severely punished for that if that's something they agreed to do?
Right.
And I also get asked a lot about why horrible, horrible things happen in this school. And doing a lot of mediumship over the years, you know, I come in contact with clients that like their child will die, for example. And I could never imagine. I don't have children. I can't put myself in their shoes, but just from an energetic perspective, being in that energy with them and feeling that and talking to that soul that left Earth and everything that that person touched while they were alive, I do feel, although it's probably controversial, but that the soul is there to help everyone around them learn and to grow. And I think some of the most advanced souls are the ones that come in and play those parts that end up being so significant to so many people.
That leave abruptly.
Yeah. Or if there's, somebody that died in some horrible tragedy, every person's departure is going to touch the people that it knew. Yeah. And through each loss, especially if it's one that's really traumatic, it's that ripple that goes through so many people. And it's through the hard times, unfortunately, here on Earth that we learn the most. And so my hope is that stories of mediumship and what happens when we pass away, that it gives the people here comfort to know that they are going to be reunited with their loved ones again. Their loved ones aren't going to forget about them. And they're not going to go reincarnate into another lifetime and you won't see them ever again, because the highest part of ourselves remains on the other side. And so we will always be able to reconnect. But yeah, it's a fascinating industry.
Yes. I can see that ripple effect in astrologically when there's a tragedy like that, and the people that it affects or the person who's died suddenly, I can see what happened or why it happened from an astrological perspective. So I'm with you on that. It doesn't feel necessarily good to hear that thing. Everything happens for a reason, but there is a reason behind it. It's not just random, and it's not just to cause suffering in the lives of those who are left behind. So it's like, yeah, that's what you said at the beginning, when you went to New York, the Omega Center, is that what it's called? Yeah. That everything, nothing's random. Nothing's random, right? So.
Yeah, it brings up this memory I have of the other day. I was doing a mediumship session and a woman wanted to connect with her husband. And before I did the session, which is what I usually do, I sat there with just the photo. That's it. Just had one photo. And as soon as I looked at his picture, my head started hurting. And then I heard the word congestion, because Spirit will use what we know in our own dictionary and our own life experiences. And it turned out once I got on to do the session that his wife said, yeah, it actually does make sense. He died of a brain hemorrhage. And it's those moments where I know without a doubt that Spirit lives on. And another woman the other day in Spirit said, tell my granddaughter that it's just like the sound of music. And I thought, oh my God, I've never even seen that movie before, but yeah, sure, I'll tell her, And I get on the session and I tell her, your grandmother is twirling. And she said, I need to talk to you about the movie, The Sound of Music. Does that make sense? And it tied into these confirmations she had about the family and that her parents looked like the characters from the movie. And so it's these things that just feel out of the blue, out of left field, that I know just as a human, like, we don't ever die, and our loved ones and the bonds of love connect us for eternity.
Yes. Well, it's so interesting when you look at the language of astrology, the root symbols. There's 3 root symbols, and one of them is the circle of spirit, which represents your eternal soul. No beginning, no end. And so when you look at the symbol for Earth, it's a cross of matter inside a circle of spirit, signifying the place where the eternal soul materializes into a physical body. That is what Earth is. And so the physical body is temporary, but the spirit lives on forever.
Forever and ever.
Yes. Well, thank you so much for being here, Dallisa, and for sharing your wisdom with us. I really enjoyed the conversation. How can people find you? How can they work with you or consume your brilliant content? Where can they find you?
Yeah, my website is spiritandspark.com. Spiritandspark.com, all spelled out.
Yes.
And my name at Dallisa Hocking is Facebook and Instagram and YouTube. So yeah.
Awesome.
Come say hello.
Yes. Yes. Well, thank you so much for being here. Any last words of wisdom to share with our audience?
Yeah, I just feel nudged to say to everybody listening to this that even if today is hard, or even if you're in some kind of tornado in your life, that it will pass, that everything in our life here on earth is temporary, and how we treat ourselves and how we treat other people is really what matters at the end of the day.
Brilliant. Brilliant. Beautiful advice. Beautiful insight. Thank you, Dallisa.
Thank you, Scott.
You're welcome. Thank you for listening to The Weekly Transit. Interviews and conversations from an astrological perspective. If you'd like to be a guest on the show, please email scott@theweeklytransit.com.